Sometimes choosing your dream means losing everything else, but not choosing it costs more. It happened in the living room, the same place I'd opened birthday gifts and helped decorate for holidays since I was 5. My father stood with his arms crossed, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "You either take your place in the company on Monday," he said, "or you find somewhere else to sleep." No one else spoke. My mother sat on the edge of the couch, staring down at her hands. My sister stood near the doorway, her lips pressed into a line, so tight it looked like she'd sewn them shut. I wasn't surprised. Not really. I told them weeks ago that I didn't want to join Sterling Enterprises, that I was building something of my own, a platform for small businesses to manage their logistics smarter, cheaper, better. My father didn't even try to understand. To him, anything outside his company was a betrayal. "I'm not built for boardrooms and handshakes," I said. "I have a vision. I'm going to build something that matters." He laughed. "You're going to live in your fantasy world until it collapses on top of you. You want out? Get out." He pointed toward the front door like I was a stranger who'd wandered in uninvited. I left that night with 2 duffel bags, my laptop, and the old Toyota I'd been driving since college. It had half a tank of gas and a rattling noise in the back axle I'd been meaning to get checked. I didn't say goodbye. They didn't ask me to stay. I parked the car near an all-night diner and sat there for hours, staring at the dashboard. Every instinct told me to turn back, to apologize, to give in. But I didn't. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of failing. I was afraid of never trying. And if the price of freedom was uncertainty, then so be it. That night, I folded down the back seats, covered myself with a hoodie, and stared out at the parking lot lights. No bed, no heat, no plan. Just me and the code I'd written. And somehow, that was enough. When you're building from nothing, even hope has a price. The first night wasn't the worst. It was the third. The excitement of rebellion had faded. The adrenaline that pushed me out the door had settled into a dull ache behind my ribs. The diner parking lot wasn't safe. The car smelled like exhaustion and stale fries. My back ached from the cramped sleep. And my laptop, the only valuable thing I owned, was balancing on a power outlet at the corner of a 24-hour laundromat. I spent mornings in coffee shops, surviving off $2 refills and the generosity of free Wi-Fi. Nights were for coding in the car, parked just close enough to catch signal from the fast food place across the street. I showered at a $5 gym, brushed my teeth in gas station bathrooms, and counted every cent like it was a decision between breathing and building. The product, the platform, was barely functional. The backend broke if you looked at it sideways. But the bones were there: an intuitive dashboard, a streamlined calendar, tools that could help small business owners stop drowning in spreadsheets. I called it Pulse, because I wanted it to keep companies alive, even when everything else was falling apart. Most nights I doubted myself. I'd sit in the driver's seat, staring at the lines of code, thinking about the warmth of a real bed, about my father's voice, the anger in it, the finality. He meant it when he said I was on my own, and I meant it when I didn't turn back. The worst moment came when I ran out of cash. I was down to my last $20, sitting in a nearly empty cafe. I hadn't eaten all day. I bought 1 slice of toast and a refillable coffee, stretched it for 5 hours. My hand shook while typing. Not from fear, from hunger. But I kept writing. Because if I stopped, I'd have nothing. Not even purpose. The days blurred into each other. I set goals: 1 feature a week, 2 cold emails a night, at least 1 business owner to talk to by Friday. I studied product design on YouTube. Practiced pitches out loud while sitting in traffic. Every no taught me something. Every maybe kept me breathing. I was broke, but not broken. And the line between those two things was thinner than I'd ever imagined. The first yes doesn't change your life, but it reminds you why you started. It happened in a dusty hardware store. I'd cold emailed 50 businesses that week. Only 3 replied. 1 agreed to meet, a local shop run by a woman named Teresa, who had been struggling to manage her deliveries and schedule inventory. I showed her what I had, a clunky but functional version of Pulse. My hands trembled while I explained it. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, and my car battery had died that morning. But I smiled through it. She didn't say much at first, just clicked around. Then she said, "You built this yourself?" I nodded. "Okay," she said. "Let's give it a try." That was it. No fanfare. No handshake. Just the quiet start of something new. Within a week, she'd recommended me to 2 other small business owners. They paid me in small installments, enough to rent a tiny studio apartment above a pizza place. The walls were thin. The ceiling leaked. but it had a door, a lock, a kitchen sink. I sat on the floor that night with a dollar slice in one hand and my laptop in the other. It wasn't victory, but it was proof. Proof that someone believed in what I built, that I wasn't just a runaway chasing a fantasy. Each new client taught me something. A flower shop needed batch invoices. A local tutor wanted time tracking. I tweaked Pulse again and again, every change driven by real needs, not theoretical features. And as the product improved, so did I. I started waking up with purpose instead of panic. I budgeted like a CEO, not a castaway. I pitched with confidence instead of desperation. I was still alone, still eating ramen more nights than not. But I'd carved out space for something they told me was impossible. And slowly, word spread. A bakery, a cleaning service, a solo therapist. Small people with big problems, the kind of businesses overlooked by giant software companies. Pulse became their solution, and I became someone they trusted. For the first time in months, I stood in front of a mirror, looked myself in the eye, and believed what I said. You're doing it. Keep going. Sometimes, growth doesn't knock, it calls from a number you don't recognize. The email came on a Thursday. Subject line, exploring potential investment. Let's talk? At first, I thought it was spam. A scam. Too polished. Too interested. But the sender was real. A venture partner at a respected fund known for early-stage tech investments. We scheduled a call. I wore my one clean collared shirt, paced my tiny studio for 30 minutes beforehand, and tried not to sound like someone who'd only just stopped living in a car. He didn't ask about my past. He asked about Pulse. How I built it. Why small businesses. What I'd learned. Where I wanted to take it. I gave him everything, the product roadmap, user metrics, revenue projections. When I was done, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You're solving a real problem. I think we can help scale this." I didn't breathe for a full 5 seconds. They offered a seed round. Modest by tech standards, life-changing by mine. Enough to build a proper team. Enough to give Pulse structure. Stability. A real shot. Then he added something else. There's one company we'd love to bring in early as a marquee client. Sterling Enterprises. You know them? I froze. Of course I knew them. My father's company. The family business I walked away from. The reason I spent nights in parking lots and days drinking reheated coffee. I didn't tell the investor the whole story. I just said, yes, I know them. He smiled. They're struggling right now. Legacy systems, bloated contracts. Your solution could be a perfect fit. I nodded slowly, because the irony wasn't lost on me. The son they cast out might be the only one who could keep their company alive. And they didn't even know it yet. I signed the deal, took the funding, hired a small, scrappy team, and began rebuilding Pulse from the ground up, sleeker, faster, scalable. We called it PulseX, and we didn't pitch it to Sterling. We let them come to us. You don't need to knock on the door they slam behind you, not when your name is already on the blueprint they're trying to copy. We launched PulseX under a new brand name, clean, neutral, no trace of me. Within 6 months, it was spreading through the industry like fire on dry leaves. Small companies adopted us fast. Mid-sized firms came next. Then came the inbound message routed through our sales team. Inquiry from Sterling Enterprises. I didn't say a word, just nodded and let the team treat it like any other lead. They were bleeding clients. Legacy software that hadn't been updated in years. Inefficient systems. High costs. Internal delays. The same problems I had warned about years ago when I still sat at their dinner table and tried to be heard. Now, they were asking for help. We scheduled a demo. I didn't attend. Our product manager led the call. I watched the recording later. My father wasn't on it, but the COO was, and 2 senior managers I recognized from my childhood. They were impressed. We offered a trial. Within 3 weeks, Sterling's East Coast branch was fully on board. No one asked who built the software. They didn't dig into the team behind the product. And I didn't volunteer the truth. Because this wasn't about revenge. This was about execution. We solved their problem with elegance, speed, and stability. We gave them what they needed, without asking for anything in return. Yet, I knew the numbers, knew the pain points. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The company that once cast me out was now running on the system I built from the backseat of a beat-up Toyota. And they didn't even know whose hands had shaped the code that was saving them. Not yet. But they would. The most powerful moment isn't when they recognize you. It's when you let them know you were never gone. The boardroom hadn't changed. Same glass walls. Same mahogany table. Same view of the city skyline that once felt like it belonged to someone else's future. But this time, I wasn't there as someone's son. I was there as the founder of the system keeping their company afloat. They invited our team to present Pulsex's long-term integration strategy. Their leadership was leaning in now, eager, hungry to be saved. My father hadn't attended the early stages too hands-off these days, they said. But for this final strategy session, he walked in. He didn't recognize me at first. Not until I stood at the head of the table. Then came the flicker, the blink, the almost imperceptible shift in his jaw. I didn't smile. I just opened the deck and began. I spoke in clean lines and clear logic. Explained how Pulsex had stabilized their infrastructure, cut costs, improved retention, and identified revenue leaks they'd missed for years. I showed them the next phase: optimization, automation, expansion. Then I closed the laptop and said, "Before we go further, there's something you should know. I built this. Pulsex. Pulse. The original framework. Every line of code. It came from me. The same person you once told to leave your house because he wouldn't work for your legacy." Silence. My father sat like stone. "I'm not here for an apology," I continued. "I'm here to offer a solution, one that ensures Sterling Enterprises not only survives but evolves. I'm proposing a merger." Gasps. Whispers. I let them settle. "You retain the brand, the history, but Pulsex becomes the controlling infrastructure, and I become CEO. You keep your name. I ensure the future. This isn't revenge. It's strategy. No theatrics. No bitterness. Just business." My father stared at me. For the first time in my life, he didn't see a disappointment. He saw the man who held the future of his company in the palm of his hand. True success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about making them irrelevant to your worth. The deal was signed 3 weeks later. Sterling Enterprises officially merged with Pulsex. The announcement made headlines: "Old blood, new tech." One article called it. I didn't care about the press. I cared about the control. As part of the agreement, I became CEO of the merged entity. My father accepted the role of Chairman Emeritus, a title with no real power but plenty of symbolic grace. It was the compromise I offered. Not to preserve his pride, but to prove that dignity didn't require destruction. He never thanked me. Not directly. But he showed up to the first quarterly meeting on time. He listened. He even nodded once or twice when I presented our new roadmap. My mother sent a single message the night the news broke. "I'm proud of you." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their validation. I'd earned something better: independence, clarity, peace. Our teams grew. We opened offices in 3 new cities. We launched a foundation for young entrepreneurs who'd been cast out, overlooked, underestimated. I made it a point to fund the kind of ideas that would have never made it past my father's desk. And every evening, I returned to a home that I built. One without tension, without compromise, without anyone else's expectations hanging in the hallway. One day, a young intern asked me what the hardest part of the journey had been. I thought about that night in the car. About the silence of my sister. The sting of the note. The weight of sleeping beside an empty passenger seat and calling it a bed. And then I said, "Not giving in. That's the hardest part. But it's also what saves you." I didn't win by crushing them. I won by creating something bigger than their fear. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough.